there's that great exchange between Major Briggs and Shelley when Major Briggs talks about the pie. Compelling.
One take, one take, one take, one take.
Greetings from Tokyo, my dear friends. This is Daisuke, and I very much hope that this video finds you well and in very good spirits wherever you are in the world. And I find myself in good spirits because I have been watching, or rewatching I should say, the episodes that can be found in this landmark series, this iconic series, which is right here, which is known as Twin Peaks. And as you may know, we have been going through this TV series, or this series, episode by episode in these video discussions. That brings us today to a discussion on episode, or what's referred to as episode 24. And so, as per usual with these videos, I'd like to focus our attention, if I may, on comments that are regarding the events leading up to and those events included in this episode 24. And not necessarily focusing on anything beyond this episode, although we might have some hints or clues or suggestions that may or may not be relevant beyond this episode 24. But for purposes of the primary discussion, let us focus on everything up to and including this episode 24. And as with the other discussions, I do not hold myself out at all to be in any way an expert when it comes to Twin Peaks. So I will make a lot of mistakes. I have made a lot of mistakes. I will try to correct them where I can, but please accept my deepest apologies in advance for that. Although I must say that I am coming at this as a fan, as a very big fan of this show, having seen it many times on many formats, and every time I feel like it's a new celebration indeed, just like right now. So without further ado, let us go to the discussion of this really, again, so many things happening in this episode 24. So where do we begin? We can start with, yes, Harry Truman. And we have him alone in the darkened, shadow-laden room, and we understand the book house. And of course we understand too that he is remembering with great sorrow and sadness the memories of his now lost and deceased love, Josie. Because as we know from the last episode, Josie died. And we must say too, died under somewhat mysterious circumstances. And such mysterious circumstances are hinted at further in this episode. Doc Hayward, we are told that Doc Hayward could not precisely identify the cause of death. And also that Josie's body weighed 65 pounds. And so that seems to just suggest some kind of mysterious circumstance. Again, at the end of the last episode, it was hinted at what might have happened to her, and who or what kind of forces might have been responsible for her ultimate and very sad passing. At least sad for Harry Truman, because he is really taking it very difficult. And here we have seemingly his emotions seem to be somewhat off kilter, and he is definitely not the Harry Truman that we have come to know and love in terms of the cool, calm, and collected Harry Truman. This is a Harry Truman that is prone to sort of a kind of violent emotional outburst, and his shouting. And we see so much Harry Truman shouting here. It's actually quite sad to see. But we also understand that this is a very sad moment, not just for us the viewers, but for Harry Truman himself, because again, he has lost the person that he loved dearly. Although there are attempts by, for instance, Dale Cooper a little bit later to try to have him come to terms with the criminal past of Josie Packard, and describing some of the incidents, right, in terms of what she did, in terms of, for instance, the killing of Jonathan, attempted killing of Cooper, etc., and also other criminal situations that she had a criminal record, which Harry is told about by Cooper in a little bit of this fashion. Again, Cooper trying to give him some kind of context as to Josie's background, maybe to ease Truman back into sort of acceptance of Josie's death. But Truman is not having it, right? He's very, very, he says, get out, right? Get out of here. And he's very loud and he shouts. And again, these emotional outbursts are very, they're telling us to the effect that Josie had. I mean, according to Hawk, Josie had power. That's certainly the case. Although there is this great moment when a little bit later, of course, we have Harry again throwing all the furniture about, except all the furniture that was nailed to the floor, according to Andy. And so that's a very interesting detail in terms of stuff that was nailed to the floor. But in any event, yes, we see a lot of stuff thrown about. It also reminds me too of Ben Horne a little bit in earlier episodes where he was rearranging his furniture in his office just before he went into the Civil War mode, or just as he was going into the Civil War mode. And here we have a similar type of situation in terms of the chaos in the furniture in this room. And here we have Dale Cooper coming in, and again, the heroic Dale Cooper knowing exactly what to say, being able to come to the rescue of Sheriff Truman in this lovely scene of a bond between the two men. Of course, we have the gun, and Harry Truman having, sort of flailing the gun about in a very dangerous fashion. And so Cooper trying to bring him back down. At first, Truman resists, but finally Cooper is able to bring him back down. And the bond between the two men is really evident in this scene and in this episode when Cooper hugs Truman, and he hugs him back, and he's really breaking down. And just he's consoling his friend. It's really a lovely moment. And there's the quote from Truman here. He says, I don't understand. There's a whole lot I don't understand. And Dale Cooper says, in return, we're all like that. And that's a moment when they're in their embrace. And it's a really key moment, too, because as I was trying to, as I mentioned in other episode discussions, one of the real heartfelt aspects of Twin Peaks, I would say, is the relationships. And one such relationship is the relationship between Dale Cooper and Sheriff Harry Truman. Remember how they first met all the way back in the pilot. There was a scene when they were all the way down the hall and you have their first meeting. And so it has a kind of distancing effect. And if you think about that and the trajectory of their character arc relationships leading up to moments like this, when they're now not far away down the hall from us, but real close up to us, and not just close up, but hugging and embracing each other, and Cooper really helping his friend. And in a time of need, Cooper is there, and he knows exactly what to say, and he brings his friend back. So it's a really lovely, poignant scene. And again, it's a reminder of the warmth that exists in the show like Twin Peaks, as exemplified in, for example, this great relationship between Cooper and Truman. And then, of course, we have, I love the scene a little bit later when Hawk and Cooper are talking while Truman is on the bed there. And they're complimenting Truman. He was a great man. He's a great man. And then and they stop for a minute. And then Truman says, or he mumbles kind of in a sleep, or maybe he's heard him, I don't know. Keep going. Keep going. I love it. That's great. So, but there's a little bit more intrigue with regard to Truman as we'll get to the very end of the episode. Before we get to that, we should mention, of course, Jones, who is the executive assistant of the late Thomas Eckert. And she visits Catherine in this episode and discusses some of the sort of the burial arrangements in terms of Josie and Thomas Eckert, and also that Thomas Eckert really loved Josie and had this great emotional connection with her. And then also there is the box. What's in the box? What's in this black box that Jones gives to Catherine? What's in this box? So I wonder what this is. Another mystery box, another mystery wrapped in a riddle inside an enigma that is seemingly encased in this box. Or maybe not, who knows? In any event, this is handed over to Catherine. What's inside, will we ever find out? Again, we may or may not, but let's leave it at that. We will see Jones again a little bit later, of course, in this episode. But before we get to that, there are also other gifts, shall we say, bestowed from one character to another in this episode. And for instance, I refer to this scene between Donna and this gentleman who calls at the door, who calls himself Gerald Craig. And he also declares that he was a friend of Doc Hayward's back from school. And he goes into the living room. He and Donna are talking. And there's a little bit of a trinket or gift bestowed to her. But of course, we know that the viewers know that this is not perhaps the person who he claims he is, but rather the master of disguise, it seems, Windom Earle, because we see Windom Earle in a number of disguises, and here is another one. And we also know that this is not the case because later, when Eileen and Doc Hayward return home, Doc Hayward reveals that this person, Craig, died some years back. And so this couldn't have been Craig. It would have been an imposter. And indeed, this little gift or trinket is a continuation. It's a connection to death in the cemetery. And also there is this continuation of the long haul or the long-term chess match, the game of death, as a manner of speaking. And we also know that this game of death has reached a level of frustration, at least for Windom Earle, as we know from a little bit earlier in the episode, because when he and Leo are together and he reads the paper to check out the move, he sees he recognizes that this move that Cooper put in the newspaper is trying to achieve stalemate, and this really infuriates Windom Earle, and he surmises that perhaps Cooper is seeking assistance or help in this matter. So it seems like not just the game is afoot, but there are raised stakes that seem to be raised even more exponentially as the time goes by. And of course, we also have a scene with Windom Earle disguised as in a different disguise when he's visiting the diner, and we'll get to that diner scene because also there are many diner scenes that are very significant in this, regarding Shelley, also regarding Annie Blackburn, etc. So we'll talk about that momentarily. But before we do, we should also point out that there's a lot of chess goings on here. Andy and Lucy and also Pete. And Pete trying to, again, do as best as he can, although he admits that there are certain sacrifices that he feels need to be made in terms of trying to get the sort of optimal gameplay strategy. So he's doing his best, although he admits that even his best won't lead to a sort of a perfect situation that maybe Cooper had been hoping for. But in any event, we will see how this chess game of death pursues forward as we get closer and closer to the sort of the subsequent episodes here. And also we should mention too that there is not just this visitor of this person who claims to be Gerald Craig. There's also another visitor who comes to the Hayward household. And we see that Donna maybe tries to go down the steps or down the stairs to answer the door, but she doesn't. She remains sort of hidden. She sees that Eileen, her mother, in her wheelchair, answers the door. And who shall be at the door here? But it is none other than Ben Horne. And Ben Horne and Eileen seem to be greeting each other, although there is something somewhat suspicious about their demeanor and their manner. And I think Donna, who remains hidden, seems to be catching or getting a sense of also this sort of suspicion of what's going on. So in any event, yes, what is this between Ben Horne and the Haywards, or specifically maybe Eileen Hayward? We shall find out if there's anything at all. Maybe there's nothing. Maybe there's something. Again, we shall see. We shall see. So there's a lot going on here in terms of the visitors to the Hayward household. Now, speaking of Ben Horne, we also have to admit that he has had a very busy episode here as well in terms of the Stop Ghostwood project and also the plan to raise awareness for this and have an event in terms of the fashion show. And here we have Richard Tremaine coming in to lend his expertise in terms of the fashion sense, and then also the return of Tim Pinkle It's nice to see Tim Pinkle again. I don't know if there are any Tim Pinkle fans out there, but yes, it's nice to see him back because we have, of course, the fashion show, we have the clothing, and we have the participants, and we have the weasel, and then we have, of course, not just the event itself, and also Catherine coming to sort of confront Ben, and then Ben, in a sense, confronting Catherine again. Remember, they had kind of come back together in a previous episode, but now they seem to be reestablishing that love-hate relationship, as it were. They are lovers, but they are also rivals, which is how it has always been, I think, since the very beginning. So it's nice to see that kind of reestablished in the world of Twin Peaks. You know, Ben is a very fascinating character. Catherine is a very fascinating character, and so when they are together, it is indeed a very fascinating relationship between these two fascinating people. And then we have the pine weasel incident at the end in terms of the nose and Dick Tremaine, and so it's quite a shocking, violent, and maybe even humorous moment as well in terms of the biting of the nose, and the chaos ensues, and everything seems to go to pieces, and Audrey falls into the arms of Jack, and so. This is very important as well because they had earlier in the episode they had their picnic, which is a kind of date, and they seem to be getting to know each other a little bit more. And here they exchange a kiss, Audrey and Jack, and so this is a very we also hear Jack singing as well, but this is also very important in terms of Audrey and her relationship. She acknowledges that there was someone, which I think is a reference to Cooper, but is no longer no longer there, and then this means that she seems to be following through with her attraction to Jack, and the attraction seems to be mutual. And we see that evidenced by the kiss that is exchanged between the two of them. So it's a very sort of romantic set of circumstances. And Jack, the Billy Zane character, with the hat and the singing and the sort of courting Audrey in this very romantic way with a picnic, and also the way they're talking. They sort of talk over each other as though they're both mutually nervous, and it has a type of a romantic charm about it. And I don't know how to cook. I'm sure there's someone in the kitchen who knows how to cook, etc. And so what will happen between these two going forward? Again, we shall wait and see. But there's more romance in the air, for Audrey. So so it's nice to see that as well, because Audrey, she hasn't had a lot of romance in her in the episodes of Twin Peaks. She tried to she tried to get together with Cooper, but then Cooper, of course, put her in the friend zone. So now it's nice to see Audrey in this romantic mode with this character. So again, we shall have to wait and see what happens to the two of them going forward, if anything at all. But that's another development as well. And also, speaking of events, we have this fashion show going on, but also there is a reference to what is called the Miss Twin Peaks contest, and this is where Norma and Shelley are talking in the diner, and maybe could Shelley be a participant, and could she be a contestant in this Miss Twin Peaks contest? She sort of shrugs it off, although this person at the counter, who we know is Wyndham Earle in disguise, compliments her and on her beauty, inner beauty, as the conversation goes. So there's that. Incidentally, there's that great exchange between Major Briggs and Shelley, when Major Briggs talks about the pie. Compelling. It's a great line. So it's great to see the word compelling being used to describe pie. It's and from Major Briggs, no less. So it's wonderful, absolutely wonderful. I love the little look that Shelley gives us, like, what did he just say? And she sort of walks off. I love that. Shelley's great. Shelley's absolutely great. She has this way of sort of kind of. She's a little bit. There's that. It reminds me a little bit of that moment when she was making fun of Leland as he was going up and down on Laura Palmer's coffin at the funeral. So she has that sort of that kind of interesting, humorous attitude about her. Let me put it that way. So I think that makes her a very, very likable character overall. But yes, we have the reference to the Miss Twin Peaks contest. What is this? What's going on? Who knows? We might see something of the Miss Twin Peaks contest later on. We shall have to wait and see. And before we get to more of the the diner stuff, I mentioned Major Briggs. Of course, here at this moment, we have Margaret, the log lady, coming in. She recognizes the marks on Major Briggs' neck. Remember the triangular formation, the three triangle formation on his neck that seemed to appear on his neck after he had returned from being missing. And there was a whole notion that maybe he went missing in relation to what we understand to be the White Lodge. What is the White Lodge? This mystery, and also mentioning of something like Project Blue Book from previous episodes, etc. And now Margaret comes into the fold, and this brings Margaret and Major Briggs a little bit later to this episode to talk to Cooper and to reveal a number of certain interesting things, right, about Margaret's past, and maybe there's a connection. So first of all, she reveals this idea about when she was 7, that there's a moment where she went missing. And when she came to, there was some kind of mark, and she shows the mark. It's on her leg, and it looks like it's sort of another a similar yet slightly different triangular formation on her leg. Excuse me. And so this is one thing. And then, so the markings seem to be maybe having some kind of significance. And also, we have the mentioning of the sound of the owls and the white flash of light. And the sound of the owls she mentions in terms of what she heard also in association with the death of her husband. So all these mysterious circumstances, and also the links to the past, particularly Margaret's past, or the log lady's past. So this is also very important, very key. And what are those markings? What do they mean? What do they mean in the context of this thing that might be called, or that might have some relevance, which has been referred to as the White Lodge? Again, we shall see. We shall see. But Margaret has always been a fascinating character. Major Briggs has always been a fascinating character. And so when they're together, again, more fascination with combinations of characters here going forward. So what does this mean? Will we find the answers that we are seeking? Again, maybe, maybe not, but we shall see. Now, going back to the diner, we also have the scenes involving Annie Blackburn, who we know called Norma in a previous episode, and there's this mentioning by Norma, or she's described by Norma as Norma's sister, and they have a little talk. They talk about mother, and so we understand that there's a sister relationship between Norma and Annie Blackburn. Of course, there might be some details that could emerge later. For instance, maybe, I don't know, if some books might be written, like, say, by Mark Frost, something about, I don't know, the secret history of Twin Peaks, or the final dossier. I don't know if you know these, but maybe there might be some interesting details about the family relationships that are emerging throughout Twin Peaks. Maybe including that of Annie and Norma and Vivian, etc. But in any event, we have Norma who's talking about Annie, and she says she's her sister, and now Annie has come here to Twin Peaks, and it seems like she has been away from society in terms of and this idea of being in a convent, and so something maybe happened to her. Why was she there? What brings her back here to Twin Peaks? She says she doesn't want any charity from her sister, and then we find her later to be working at the diner, and she's there on duty just as Cooper comes in with the Tibet book, and he looks up and sees Annie, and there's something in his eyes, is there not, in terms of the way he's looking at her and talking about the coffee, etc. And also noticing some marking of some sort, maybe on her arm. Maybe that might be significant as well going forward, or maybe not. There seem to be a lot of things involving marks and markings, etc., on the body. And so, again, we shall see. We shall see. So Annie is now another new character, a fresh face in the context of the Twin Peaks cast of characters, as it were. So we shall see to what extent Annie, what her role is, if any, going forward in this, again, great epic that is known as Twin Peaks. And so We should also then bring the conversation. Well, actually, before we go there, I mentioned Norma, and when we mention Norma, we should also mention Ed. And of course, there's a scene between Ed and Nadine and Dr. Jacoby, and it's sort of the idea of a breakup scene. Although there is the suggestion that maybe what Ed is seeking is the idea of the discussion of divorce. And so we understand too that Nadine at least is saying that she doesn't quite get this, because as we know, she is still in the mindset of being a high school student. Um, so and then she also realizes that she can't see through one of her eyes, and so this is again a kind of realization. And Nadine is a really fascinating character, and also it's nice to see Dr. Jacoby here, and also it's that look on Ed's face, that constant look on Ed's face. It's like it's like a look of confusion etched in stone. It's really wonderful. And then speaking of Nadine too, there's a scene a little bit later with her and Mike, and sort of pretending to be a couple and checking into the Great Northern, and so Mr. and Mrs. Hinkman. And so they're kind of in disguise, and so it seems like maybe they are checking in for a night of shall we say, a night of romance. And so, of course, Mike is recognized by someone there, and is referring to school, see you at school, etc. So that might give the game up, and maybe if it wasn't given up already. But in any event, yes. So intrigue between Nadine, Mike, and Nadine and Ed, Dr. Jacoby, and then links to Norma and Shelley and everything, and then Annie and Cooper and all this. And so it's all coming to a head, is there not? Because and also something that is also sort of reaching a sort of climactic tone. Let's go back to Sheriff Truman, right? Because Sheriff Truman is still asleep, recovering, and the book house, and we understand one of the book house boys getting knocked out. And who knocks him out? Another than Jones, the executive assistant of Eckhart. And she comes, and remember earlier in the episode, she gave a box to Catherine, this black box, and now she's here, and with the to Sheriff Truman. What's going on? What's going to happen to Sheriff Truman? What's she going to do? We're not sure, because before we can find out, credits roll. So what's going to happen here? The intrigue continues. Who is Jones? What's her significance, if any? What's going to happen with the chess match? What's going on? What's going to happen to the Pine Weasel? My goodness, won't someone think of the Pine Weasel? At least Ben Horne seems to, in terms of his Stop Ghostwood campaign. What's going to happen with Audrey and Jack, and what's going to happen to Leo, and what's going to happen to Major Briggs and Margaret, and of course Sheriff Truman and Cooper and Hawk and Andy and Lucy and the like, and everyone else, Doc Hayward, Eileen Hayward, Donna, and the like, and so and Ben Horne, so and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So Twin Peaks, yes, what a show it is. So let us stop here, and we will continue on with our discussions going forward. But until then, my dear friends, please be happy and healthy and well, and please keep on watching a lot of great, great movies and TV shows like Twin Peaks. So anyway, my dear friends, thank you and cheers.